Welcome to the Urban Logistics webinar series. This series is made to highlight the current state of our urban logistics in Singapore, our successes and our challenges. Today's topics will be covering sustainability as well as safety. And we have some great experts to present some of their experiences as well as to answer questions of the community here. Also, there will be two more urban logistics webinar series, which are coming in August, just around the corner. So we will have a urban logistics webinar concentrated on container maritime shipping coming up on August 17th. Additionally, we will have a last mile session, which is going to be moderated by Dr. Syed Mahdi Zarai, who's also on the call today. And that will be August 24th. So that's just right around the corner. Okay, so let me share my screen real quick. Share. Pop that up. Okay, so yes, again, today's topic will be about safety and sustainability. And it is brought to you by CILT Singapore. The Chartered Institute of Logistics and Transport has been promoting continuous learning as well as the profession of logistics and transportation in Singapore since 1971. You can help enrich our industry as well as the profession by joining CILT yourself. Just go to www.cilt.org.sg and learn about membership and some of the things we do. Now, on to the panel of experts, which we are going to have today. We have Michelle Lee, who's the Chief Sustainability Officer at SingPost. We have Hassan Raza Lagari, Vice President, Ground Operations, APEC, DHL Express. And then we have as well Ko Wee Hao, Head of Commercial at Ninja Van, Singapore. Myself, I'm Tim Foote. I'm the founder of Symbio, and I consult organizations on how to move green. So I'm very much in touch with the sustainability side. And we also have as a moderator today, Dr. Syed Mahdi Zarai, Director CILT, as well as Senior Lecturer at SUSS here in Singapore. Now the agenda is basically, we'll give an overview of sustainability and safety here in 10 minutes. And then information from the panel. It should be 35 minutes in general. They should be able to share some things from their perspective on these topics. And then we will have a question and answer session for attendees, and that will be the last 15 minutes. By the end of today, you'll be able to understand challenges that urban logistics faces to meet sustainability and safety goals. And also, you'll see where Singapore is excelling in these two areas. Now, first of all, an overview on sustainability, since that's my forte. According to the PUB, the mean sea levels are rising at the rate of 3 to 4 millimeters per year, just around our seas here in Singapore. So climate change and global warming does have a real impact on communities in Southeast Asia, and it is threatening a lot of the wildlife as well as our way of life. As we can see from figures, and this changes from year to year and depends on the matrices that are being used, but in general, transportation makes up around 14% of the contribution of emissions that is eating up the planet every year. And as in the future, as things progress, we're all in a race. Transportation industry, electricity, agriculture, we're all in the race to reduce that share for this, because we want it down to zero. Now, just to highlight some on that transport pie, I'm taking some data from the United States to show kind of a breakdown of what kind of vehicles are actually making up a lot of that pie. As we can see, light duty vehicles make up 57% of global greenhouse gases in general. And that is a lot of urban logistics, in particular vehicles. And we'll be talking about that some today. Now, some of the discussion is going to be around EVs, and as well, just wanted to highlight Singapore also has a challenge, as well as the other countries in Asia Pacific, to bring down the carbon which is emitted when energy is produced. So here I've just kind of given you an idea of where Singapore is sitting in terms of the grid, the grams of CO2 per kilowatt. And as you can see, yeah, I mean, it's kind of like in the middle of the field there. But definitely all the countries in Asia Pacific do have challenges to bring this up. Now with that, I'm going to let Dr. Zayed Mehdi Zareh present some of his information.
Thank you, Tim. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for attending our third webinar on safety and sustainability in urban logistics. My name is Mehdi, and I'm a board member at CILT Singapore and also a senior lecturer at Singapore University of Social Sciences. I will provide a brief background on urban logistics, its operations, externalities, and some of the potential measures that we can adopt to address these externalities. So next one, please. Okay, so in general, urban logistics is a complex field, and the heterogeneity of the activities and the products and the actors involved makes it very challenging to find solutions that fit all of the market sectors involved in urban logistics. Also, the kind of freight that we have moving around in city areas, previous one, please. We have freight related to the national and international trade, which was the focus of the second webinar that we had. And also we have the freight related to the urban demand and supply, which is also increasing in terms of volume because of the increasing e-commerce, just-in-time practices by retail stores, also population growth, employment growth, and so on. Here we can also see some of the driving forces that are and will be impacting the operations of urban logistics. So, a couple of them are kind of worsening the situation, population growth, urbanization, e-commerce growth, desire for speed. So they will be adding to the number of freight movement in the area. But some of them, like sharing economy, for example, the collaborative business models, they may help to go more towards the consolidation and reduce some of the externalities. Next, please. But despite the important role that urban freight and urban logistics has on the competitiveness and also the development of the cities, it also creates a variety of externalities. So air pollution, congestion, noise, safety, and land use. So I will briefly elaborate on each of them. The thing is, although the urban logistics vehicles and fleet, they are a minor proportion of the city road traffic, but they are one of the most significant emission contributors. In terms of congestion, the freight vehicles are increasingly demanding space for delivery and parking, especially in the cities that when they have been designed, the freight vehicles, they have not, and still they are not the priority users of the street. So this increased the congestion. And also in terms of safety, freight vehicles are not necessarily more unsafe, but more because of the blind spot that they have, slow vehicle reaction times, and sometimes large roads, and also sometimes hazardous material loads that they have. The accident involved in these vehicles and the passenger one are very concerning. In terms of noise, we can say in general, freight vehicles are having more noise compared to the passenger ones, and also freight operations in terms of loading, unloading, braking, they can be, annoyance, especially during the late hours. And lastly, which is very important, the expansion of freight-related activities in urban areas, because the providers, they want to be able to provide speedy delivery to the consumers. They have no choice but to be closer and closer to the consumers. So what happens is that it results in kind of a competition between the freight and non-freight stakeholders for the limited amount of the land in the urban areas. Next one, please. So this chart highlights the external cost of different urban logistics transport solutions. So external costs are the costs which is borne by the society in general, not the fleet owners. So, and out of these external costs, the congestion cost is the major factor. So at the one end, we can see that the LCVs running on diesel are the least environmental friendly vehicles. And on the other hand, we have the heavy goods vehicles. They have the lowest external cost, and it highlights the importance of consolidation in urban logistics. But the thing is, achieving consolidation, considering it requires the cooperation among different actors, it's very difficult to achieving urban logistics. And in between these two extremes, we can see the relatively limited performance of the electric LCVs, because they have limited impact on the congestion, even though they're improving the air quality, have less noise and so on. But since the congestion is the major component of the external cost, they have some limited performance over there. And lastly, we can see the cargo bikes. They have the potential to reduce the external cost significantly, but again, in terms of their capacity and also whether they are moving on road or on the bike lanes, it impacts their performance. Next one, please. So just to summarize, we can observe that the sustainability goes beyond climate change and air pollution. So we need to consider the people or the social elements, and also planet or the environment, and definitely profit or the economic elements. And next one, please. So policymakers, city authorities, even operators, they came up with different improvement measures, trying to reduce the scale of the externalities that we just discussed. Here we can see the categories under the avoid, shift, and improve framework. So under avoid, we try to reduce the need to travel or the travel distance by the freight vehicles. So how we can achieve that? For example, at the micro level, if we can reduce the total consumption, if we can move more towards the circular economies. At the operational level, again, we can see the consolidation. This is a major factor over there. The shift strategies, they try to transfer the freight activities to more energy efficient or more environmentally friendly modes. So they try to reduce the emissions per unit freight activity. And lastly, we have the improved strategies. They try to enhance the energy efficiency of the current road freight transport modes, their operations and technologies. Get back to you, Tim.
Okay, great. So thank you for that. If you and now we will allow our panel to share from their perspective what's happening in these areas. If you do have questions, then please put them in the chat, and we will get to them. We will strive to get to them during the Q&A, which is coming after the panelists have a chance to present. Okay, so now maybe we can get this moving along, and we start with a small presentation from Hassan at DHL. Mr. Legari, let's get your presentation up, and I will stop sharing. I think there we go. There we go. Go ahead.
All right. So let's start from the beginning. Okay. So good morning and good afternoon, everyone, wherever you are. Thanks for joining this. And so I'm going to present from a DHL Express sustainability point of view, the roadmap, what are our priorities, where we are, and what we are doing to sort of address this situation. Next slide, please. Okay, so if you look at this one, what we have done is that we have made a roadmap in terms of sustainability, which is into three parts. The number one is the clean operations for climate protection. That is the one I'm going to focus today. But continuing doing that, we also have sustainability to become the great company to work for all. And of course, towards the end, a highly trusted company in terms of compliance. So these are some of the, sort of, you can say the three main focus areas that can impact in our communities, and we operate through our Go Green programs. Next slide, please. Now, just to give you a high level that we are going to invest about $7 billion until 2030 in clean operations in order to reduce the emissions from 33 million tons in 2020, which has already started, up to under 29 million tons by 2030, and thereby, of course, trying to commit to the science-based targets initiatives. Just on the right side, if you look at this, what is it that we're going to do up until 2030 and spending all of this money? Now, we're trying to target 30% of sustainable aviation fuels, blending into our fleet. We have a global fleet of aircrafts, and of course, we want to use this, sustainable aviation fuels into our aircrafts. The other thing is that we want to try to electrify 60% of our fleet, which is the EVs or which are on the road. That's something we are targeting to have 60% by 2030 as well. We have already started in 2021, our carbon neutral building. So we have a lot of facilities across the globe. And what we're trying to do initially to start with the ones that we own to make it into a carbon neutral buildings. Now, if you are aware of it, there are a lot of levers for a carbon neutral building, starting from solar panels, LED lights, renewable energy and whatnot. So we're trying to convert, we have started that process globally. And of course, if you see on the right side, we are offering green products to our customers. When you book shipments through DHL, this could be eco flyers, this could be renewable sort of packaging that we are now giving it to our customers. Next slide, please. Maybe it's a bit slow. And can you move on to the next slide? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So DHL Express approach and showcase. Now, these are some of the examples of the Express environmental improvement focus that we have. And of course, if you look at on the left side, it says aviation network improvement. We are trying to do some aircraft replacements, that is Boeing 777s. We are working on the fuel optimization program, sustainable aviation fuels usages. We are buying it from different companies. And of course, we have ordered about 8 e-cargo plane. We call it Alice. These are coming somewhere in 2027 now. So these will be the first e-cargo planes used by any logistics company. Like I said, we are also preparing to improve our electric fleet expansion. The biggest one is, of course, happening in EU at the moment. But we are also doing a lot in other regions, especially Americas and APEC and MENA and Africa as well. I also mentioned the carbon neutral building creations. Yeah, we are trying to ensure that the most modern technologies are available in the market and that we create such an atmosphere where we have a zero emission buildings, right? That is ice storage, heating, cooling, and so forth. Employee engagement, of course, we have a big company, about 600,000 people. So what we're trying to do is educate each and every employee to ensure that they are certified Go Green specialists. They know the basics of Go Green, what is it all about, and of course, a lot of our people are involved in planting trees and other environmental sort of activities. Now, so I can't see on the right side. I think there is. Maybe you need to. Okay, there you go. So clean operations service offering. Yes, like I said, we are expanding our clean operations portfolio into upsetting, utilizing our carbon reporting. We do a lot of carbon reporting. Started almost last 2 years back, and we are involved in tax economy and other stuff. So each and every EVs, for example, that we are delivering, the customer knows that my shipments are delivered without any carbon emission. So big companies are reaching out to us and saying, if you are delivering a shipment, can you deliver it through e-vehicle, right? So that means they want their shipments to be delivered without any emissions. Next slide, please. Yeah, so remember, again, a lot of it is repetition, but every time you see a new slide, there's some additions into it. At the moment, we have a big fleet globally, and of course, we are trying to electrify 60% of it by 2030. Like I mentioned, we are trying to reduce fuel consumptions through permanent network improvements. Now, all of our people are being trained on the certified international specialists, and these are sort of eco-friendly driving training programs that we do to our drivers. And we are also trying to bring in hydrogen and electric trucks wherever we can for a road line haul. Now, we mentioned in terms of transport and service partner, we work, a lot of our people also come from the third party, individual contractors. And they also, of course, work with us. They wear our uniforms, they brand our vans, but we're also trying to push this for them also to buy EVs rather than go for ICE vans. So that they understand, we're trying to give them some subsidy as well, give them some discounts so that they can bring in their EVs as well. And we are now seeing that a lot of our service partners are bringing in their EVs as well. Next slide. Now, this is just to give you a very high level in terms of DHL cargo bikes. Now, this is important to reduce our air pollution in our inner cities. At the moment, we have few of them. You can see the Chariot, we use that in Netherlands. And there's another one, T-Trike, we use them in Japan. And of course, we are piloting e-cargo cycle with 400 pounds capacity pilots. We are piloting that in US and Mexico. Generally, the challenge in APEC is that because it's a hot weather out here, so we cannot have a bike going out for deliveries. But in Europe and especially colder climates, this works very well for us. And of course, these are extremely zero emission and very something that customers also like it. They want their deliveries to be done, and we do these deliveries in the CBD areas because that's where the buildings are, and we can just go easily deliver, park it at one place and go from one building to another building. So that's something we are using frequently. We are also trying now recently in Taiwan, again, areas where the climate is better and not humid. Next slide, please. Yeah, this is just a high level to give you people who are out there running logistics companies. And especially we are an express, so I'll talk about from an express point of view. These are the original standard e-van specifications for you out there. If you want to take a snapshot of this, if you must have a van, please make sure that this requirement is made. Minimum is 1,000 to 2,500 kilograms, and of course there are heights, and we're looking at minimum of 200 kilometers of range. and air conditioning is a must. Yeah. So please remember, if you want to buy a van, EV especially, look at these specifications, and you may not get it exactly what it is, but because we have some vans also which are smaller in size, less than 1,000 kilograms in terms of payload, but yeah, they still work for us. Next slide. Again, I have written a few challenges in terms of what we are facing in different countries. It could be different depending on the region, depending on the country, and of course on the cities. Now, these are of course rechargeable capabilities, the product life cycle, whether the battery will go on for 5 years or 8 years or 10 years or not, then whether it is cost competitive. Right now, if you want to buy something for 50,000, the EV would be about 70 to 80,000. So there's a cost sort of. Then there's a vendor deployment. Vendors are reluctant to deploy in APEC because there's a lot of issues such as price, infrastructure, regulations, repair and maintenance capabilities. We are facing it, but I tell you what, when we started this sort of journey 7 to 8 years back in APEC, especially for DHL Express, these were big sort of challenges, but slowly and gradually, I think these challenges are coming down. We don't face all of them, but yeah, some of them are still there. For example, mileage range, 100 to 200 kilometers. So that's something, and of course, payload. Battery technology is new, right? So if you go for a new vendor, you ask them how long the battery will last. They can say 5 years, they can say 8 years. But when you ask them, have you had this experience before where there were some problems with the batteries? They said, oh, we are fairly new, so we don't know. So the vendors are also new, right? A year, 2 year, 3 year old vendors. So, but that's the risk you have to take, right? And battery generally does work. And of course, they have some contracts where you have an agreement. If something goes wrong, they can replace it and so forth. And of course, in terms of safety, I think do remember that these are very quiet, and hence if you are passerby and an EV passes by you, you would not even know that a car has gone by because they are very quiet. So yeah, sometimes it could be prone to accidents, but they're good in a way also because there's no pollution, there's no noise pollution. We heard Mehdi talking about it in terms of noise pollution. So that's a challenge, but in terms of driving, you have to be careful when the pedestrians are crossing. Yeah. Next slide, please. Yeah. So again, high level, some financial support that, of course, small vendors they need. We need, and not small, just smaller to bigger vendors, because bigger vendors have more bigger fleets, and that's why they need it. That's something we are looking at, to have lower import duties for e-vehicles, government subsidies, tax incentives. Some would say, contestable funding programs. Yeah, we're looking at toll-free parking fee for e-vehicles if the government really wants to sort of pursue this going forward. And in terms of non-financial support, we are looking more charging infrastructure, right? To do that, generally, for us, for example, we want to do it within our facilities because the courier can't wait outside in a line for about 15, 20 minutes or 30 minutes to charge the battery. So we do it overnight. And of course, yeah, develop suitable regulations wherever you are. Please do lobby with your governments. That's something you would need. We have done that a lot. We are still doing it, and we have come a long way. 5, 6 years back, when we started doing this within Singapore, LTA and EDB, and when I look at now, I think we have come a long way. They've given us subsidies. They are supporting us all the way. Just last year, we added about 100 plus EVs in Singapore alone, and the government gave us subsidies, so which is really good. And of course, less restrictions. We want to go to CBD areas during peak hours without any, parking fee, or it has to be a toll fee or something. So these are some of the non-financial support that you would need from your government. So I would really encourage to do lobbying from your end as well. Next slide. All right, that's it from my side. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Hassan. It's amazing. I love the slide with the band specifications and the current challenges. This is really great. Next, I'd like to move on ahead to Ko Wei Hao, who will present from Ninja Van.
I'm sorry, just want to check if everybody can hear me. Cool.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Thank you. So yeah, maybe just a short introduction on NinjaVan first, right? So we are an express logistics company with our self-operated assets across Southeast Asia. Primarily, our core business is in the last mile, but we also do cross-border clearance, fulfillment, and even what we call Ninja Mart, which basically just utilizes our Poodle points for certain transactions. We do deliver about 2 million parcels daily across the region with about 2,500 hubs and stations, along with the latest number is closer to 60,000 drivers and riders, all within this region. We probably can share about how we see our sustainability journey first, right? So we are currently in phase 1, where we're still trying to manage, or rather trying to see how we can measure, collect data, and also benchmark certain scoring system. So that we, as collectively as a group, we know where's our direction that we should head towards to. There's no clear definition on phase 2 and phase 3 yet. So comparatively to DHL, we're still a very, very young company, still trying to figure our way through the sustainability journey. Now, some of these key challenges that we're going through right now, definitely cost, right? I think going green at this moment is too expensive for a small company like us. Vehicle switching cost is also particularly expensive in Singapore. Even with the tax rebate and all, it cannot curb the rising cost of vehicle entitlement certificates. Right? And also the opportunity cost, as clearly mentioned by Hassan earlier as well. The charging frequency because of the mileage range, right? And at the time it takes to charge the vehicle at this current moment, it's too much of a cost to us, right? Versus an ICE engine. Also, there's a lack of market demand actually from what we see, right? While a lot of big companies do say that they are willing to pay more, but in actual fact, in the tender, we don't see this happening, right? If you try to price more for sustainability efforts, you're getting priced out very easily, especially in this last mile scene here in Singapore. Also, because we are in a B2B space, any profit, right, will usually go upstream and it will not flow downwards to us as a last mile service company. Now, this is proven. We did try to launch a eco packaging material services side by side along with our relatively affordable plastic material packaging. The results are really very drastic. Our plastic material, we call it Ninja packs, are so far a far mile ahead than our eco packaging materials. Now, therefore, with all these key challenges in mind, we then look to optimize internally on how we can reduce costs first by reducing consumption. Some ways we're looking to reduce consumption could be in the form of how do we travel lesser, how do we make our vehicles or our manpower travel lesser. So we are lucky for us, right, in a very dense city like Singapore. We are trying to move towards a walker model. Right, transportations are still fairly accessible, and therefore, walker model may fit a city like ours. We have also introduced stations that's closer. So we used to operate with just one major warehouse in Singapore. Now we've opened up a lot more stations that are closer to the heartlands, right? So the drivers don't have to travel the further distance, right? So we consolidate and we line haul to the stations, and therefore the individual drivers have to travel lesser. We also strongly encourage Poodle deliveries, where consumer can collect from a collection point rather than our drivers delivering to doorstep where it consumes more energy. However, there's a lot more work to be done on the front, especially. We also try to change our internal processes. I think as of last year, we have moved towards paperless operations as much as possible. We then remove printers from the operation warehouses, and we encourage everyone to print, right? We also been trying to reuse as much as we can, especially for line hauls. We are trying to reuse our gunny sacks, for example. So these are very, very simple change, but it does have a good financial impact, and it also work towards sustainability as well for our side. Then we also look to educate people and influence them internally, and this usually starts from the top, right? I mean, fortunately for us, we have a younger workforce, and also we have a very, very environmental conscious country head, right? Who then influence down the line, and every one of us just internally motivated to make sure we are contributing to the environment as best as we can, right? We have also changed our procurement processes. We have invested heavily into custom-made cages, where we kind of reduce the need for pellets and string wraps. While it's not entirely removing the need for pellets and string wraps, but we reduce a significant amount of usage there. We have also reduced the thickness of string wrap. So I think 2 years back, we reviewed whether or not there's a need to purchase such a thick string wrap. So we reduce it by almost, I think, 30% of the thickness there, and thereby reducing our costs as well, right? While reducing the usage of plastics. Our procurement team has also relooked into the policies. For now, most of the purchases, we'll try to encourage recycled plastics instead, whenever there's a need to, right? If not, it's environmentally friendly material. Sorry, I can't seem to move the screen. Oh, sorry. Yeah. Actually, that's about all we do. Yeah. Thank you.
Oh, great. Thank you so much for that presentation, Wee Hao. And I think it just highlights a lot in a very competitive last mile environment. I think the takeaways is that there's still a real lack of demand from shippers. They are not going to pay for this. I think that is the bottom line. And the challenges that you still see in trying to green your fleets and things like that is very relevant. And I think it's very relevant for most providers in the market here. So let's go to SingPost. Michelle, yes, can you share what's happening at the Post?
Can I just double check everyone can see the slides?
Yes, can.
Excellent. Okay, thanks for having me here, everyone, and nice meeting you. And today, basically, I'll be sharing how SingPost approaches sustainability. And also, we've had a chance to look at some of the pre-submitted questions. So I thought I incorporate some of that discussions in my slides to share with you some of our experiences and viewpoints on things. So I think the screen has freezed. Okay. Right. So how we actually approach sustainability, we have actually taken a very consultative approach. Not only did we actually look upon ourselves to ask us what exactly is material, what do we mean and define sustainability in this organization, we have actually consulted the board, the management, but importantly also our colleagues in the entire organization at different levels, right, to understand in order to operate sustainably and to make a difference, what exactly needs to be looked at. And we have also taken advice from external stakeholders, important stakeholders such as our investors, bankers, shareholders, regulators, policymakers to actually engage with different parties to get a well-rounded view. And on top of that, we have also looked at other organizations in the industry just to do a sort of a check back. Have we actually missed out anything, right, on what is actually material when we are talking about sustainability? So we took on that entire approach, and how do we actually balance the ESG side of things, right? So after we look at all the material matters that everyone told us we need to be looking at, a prioritization exercise took place on what's material and a common ground for all. And we have actually derived in the 3 pillars of focus where we actually look at cherishing our planet, which actually looks at climate action and resilience, as well as resource efficiency and waste management. Then we are also told that we should be looking at collaborative partnerships, meaning, to be sustainable, we do need to engage with our supply chain. We need to be embarking on product and service innovation, ensure that we have actually built a good customer experience, and also working in partnership with our community, because there is really a need to be doing that for any responsible organization. Then there is actually a 3rd dimension, a lot of it in understanding the governance and in placing importance on our employees, right? So there is the culture of trust pillar, where we look at employee engagement and talent practices, health and safety aspects, right? Ethical and transparent business practices, and importantly, of an emerging concern, data privacy and cybersecurity. So looking at all these 3 pillars, this is basically what we mean when we are operating sustainably. Only if we have balanced all 3 pillars are we sustainable, right? And in looking at that, there is also a natural focus leaning a lot towards the carbon, and that's not being selective, but that's because the market is moving us in this space, right? There's a lot of policy making and global attention and global trends that is pointing that there is a real need to be looking at climate action right away. And not only to look at climate action, but at the same time to be building resiliency for the organization and the community that we are operating in. Right. So we have actually taken an approach where we actually need to understand where our different contribution or impact that we have on the planet is coming from. And that we were guided by the GHG protocols, looking at our scope 1, 2, and 3. Where might that actually be coming from? Right? It's only that you know where it's coming from and how big your carbon footprint is from each scope that you are able to then target, right, in terms of reduction. So we actually took, quite some time to actually understand our carbon footprint in the lens of this 3 scope. And we understand that there are certain scopes that are a little bit harder than the rest, for example, scope 3, right? So I'm just assuming everyone understands, but scope 1 is direct fuel combustion, right? So that's normally from the fuels that we pump in our vehicles, right? Or even the diesel that you use in your backup generators to power up your building when electricity comes down. Then scope 2 is basically the electricity that you utilize to power up your buildings and, to power up your charging infrastructure. And then there's scope 3 that is a result, in your supply chain, upstream, downstream, as a result of your business activities. So we understood where the contributing factors are, and we then went on to set matrix and targets for ourselves. And we are also looking at the realistic side of things, right? So, scope 3 being a very difficult one, we understand we need to take time And being in the logistics and transportation industry, a lot of contributing factor in the scope 3 comes from, the sea freight and the air freight side of things. And as we know, technology for sustainability in that sector is still developing. So it is not realistic to set a target that is nearer term. So then what is possible in the nearer term is what we asked ourselves. And then we set a target near term that is within our control. So scope 1 and 2 is something we can control. And that's what we have set for ourselves in a phased approach. And I'm actually glad to say, in terms of net zero goals for ourselves, scope 1 and 2 emissions, we have managed to achieve 30% from the baseline year of FY 18-19. And we have a commitment to electrify our fleet in Singapore by 2026 to 100%. And to date, we have already converted over 30% of that for Singapore. And in terms of decarbonization hierarchy, there's actually, a priority approach right down to the list desirable ones. But on top of that, we have also adopted many other strategies to help us in this approach. As a first, we always believe in looking at efficiencies as a first to eliminate any usage that is not required and reduce any consumption levels that we already have, if possible, with the adoption of technology and better efficient ways of doing things. Secondly, if we are not able to eliminate, reduce consumption where it's feasible, right? Do not affect your operations as you're doing that. It shouldn't be affecting the efficiencies that you need to deliver, because remember, customer experience is also important. So don't save the planet and deprive someone else from something that they need, right? Then the third approach is actually to seek for lower carbon but commercially viable alternatives. So, is renewable energy a viable option? Are biofuels a viable option in our markets? So these are the consideration. Only after we have exhausted all these attempts do we actually look at compensating and neutralizing, as you would have heard a lot about carbon credits. So that would be the last. So as you have heard, we have actually set targets and understand the different pathways. But importantly, we have also imposed an internal carbon pricing, meaning for investments that we make, we actually take internal carbon tax on ourselves to understand how are we better off or not. So basically, it forces the business to actually look at carbon impact for every decision that we make. And that itself will actually swing the decisions, right, towards something that is a lot more environmentally friendly and responsible. And an important equation in doing all these is data. Do not undermine data. And that itself will actually point you in a very focused direction on where you should be focusing on. But obviously, if you're going to rely on data, your data has to be reliable and credible. Then you will be making informed decisions. And the board and management involvement, coupled with clear policies and procedures, will then align the entire organization from the top all the way to the bottom in a very consistent manner and focused manner in getting to achieve all the targets. So some questions that has come in were asking, are we able to save costs by looking at environmental sustainability? The answer is yes, but I can't say for all circumstances, right? But it depends on how you look at it. So most carbon savings, if you're actually looking at efficiency, actually does translate to cost savings. In fact, if that is your first priority, the operational savings will likely be sustained over a longer term period, right? And if you are actually looking at environmental sustainability and your customers are also looking at that, you will actually find some revenue opportunities as the demand for carbon visibility and reduction has risen exponentially. And when we are actually looking at investing in green technologies and such, do not look at them in silos only. You might want to look at them as a whole package, you know, because some will actually take a longer payback period as well. And these are especially true if you are looking at new sustainable buildings or redeveloping a new building. There's a great opportunity for you to look at them as a whole package. And there are also some ways where CapEx is not always required. If you are actually looking at, whatever as a service, so take, for example, aircon as a service, right? These ones are normally tied to performance contracting and they take the CapEx load off you, and that then translates to an OpEx instead. And likewise, for solar panel investments, you can actually take the solar leasing model. Right. So over time, more technology will become commercially viable to us because now there is green financing options that are made more accessible to us. And there is also a growing evolution on blended financing that is evolving now. And I understand there's a lot of talk about fleet electrification. And I thought just to share some of the experiences that we have, as we are electrifying. Sometimes people are saying, is it really environmentally friendly to actually switch from ICE to EV because you are still using electricity. From a strict carbon accounting point of view, the moment you switch to an EV, you would actually have shaved your carbon emissions by about half, right? That's due to the carbon emission factor. And when you electrify, do not go by a one-for-one replacement approach. You should always be studying the capacity of the replacement EV based on the needs that you have. Understand the range that the new EVs you're investing in has, right? What is their energy efficiency levels? And frankly speaking, if you can actually have a bigger capacity, you don't actually need as many as you would have with ICE. It can actually be reduced in numbers. And do not actually go for a one-time switch out because the technologies of EVs are continuing to be evolving. So, you have the opportunity to actually spread out your risk of not going into one batch of technology only. And if something is wrong with that technology, it can be actually a very expensive exercise for you. EVs are currently not rationally priced, including the maintenance cost. So policymakers, if you're on this call, I would like to urge you to continue to, to support the private sector in forms of incentives, etc., to help the transition. Charging infrastructure should also be looked at to tackle range anxiety. So many a times, excuse me. Many a times when we look at sustainability, a lot of companies actually just look at the green part. There is actually a need to be looking at the social and governance part, which will actually contribute to economics. And safety is one of those critical ones in our industry because every vehicle, every goods that is being moved at the moment requires a lot of manpower. And with that, we need to actually ensure everyone has a right to go home safe every day, right? So if we actually put the effort and focus on the people, obviously the people will focus on the business. And sometimes it is not a direct cost savings that you're going to see. But if you are focusing on safety, you will be able to avoid costs of safety regulatory violations and potential stop work orders if someone is seriously injured. Imagine if your facilities are given a stop work order you are not able to process your deliveries and you're going to fail in your operations. And that will obviously impact your productivity and result in financial losses. So with that, that ends my presentation. I hope that's helpful for everyone.
Yeah, well, that was a great presentation, Michelle. Congratulations for the 30% reduction from, I think you said the baseline was 2019?
18.
18. Wow.
18,
Okay,
19,
that's
yeah.
great. So it's actually relatively recent. So that is a really big reduction. Well done.
Thank you.
And also, I was really interested in the internal carbon pricing model that y'all are doing. And as you mentioned, you know, that really impacts all the departments in a way, because
That's
then
right.
you just start looking at everything, you know, and that is but to your point, I mean, the data, it requires data, right? And y'all have obviously done a lot of work to make that work. So yeah, that was a great presentation. So now I think we can go to the Q&A, and I have one Q&A question. So people, if you have any questions to put into the meeting chat, please do so now. And I will start with a question that came in from the registrants. One of the top ones, I think, which would be on everybody's mind, what are some top ideas every company should pursue when it comes to sustainability or safety? So maybe I can start with Hassan for this, or Weihao. I know Michelle added some information about this in her presentation.
Sorry, Tim, can you repeat your question?
So a top idea that you should pursue when it comes to sustainability and getting on that track.
I think for us, it should be, or for everyone else, it should be the low-hanging fruits, right? We should approach something which does not, because we have companies from smaller to bigger companies. So we should approach something which doesn't really involve a big capex, right? A lot of investment is required. So think of like I said, think of tree plantations, for example. Think of having LED lights in your small office or your facility, right? And so all of these things do matter. I think the ideas are out there. If you have a bigger fleet, start with one EV van. You don't have to go and hit the 30% or 60% target. Have your own targets, I guess. That's something very important, and see whether it fits to you. But I think going forward, the customer that you're working with would like to see you as a go green, sort of a climate sustainable company. And so you need to set targets for your own self and see where you are, where you want to be in the next 5 to 10 years, right? Depending on your company size and whatnot, right? And with what sort of customers you are working with. So if you're in the packaging industry, for example, you need to convert all those packaging slowly and gradually to sustainable packaging. If you have a big fleet, start with the 1 EV or 2 EVs, right? If you're a company where you're not just in Singapore or just not in one country, but other countries, see where the government giving you more subsidies, right? So I think there are a lot of ideas, but start with the smaller ones, start with the low-hanging fruits where you don't have to really invest big.
Okay. Weihao, do you have any suggestions for the attendees in regards to safety or with sustainability? You've already started on those low-hanging fruits. I can see that from your plan, right?
Yeah, I think it depends on the appetite of the company, right? For us, as a relatively smaller company, we tend to go for something a bit more palatable, especially on internal processes. I think what I personally like is that we try to encourage our own internal teams to stop using paper. Right? So I think that's one of the easiest start for me. And then also education, encouraging people to be a bit more conscious about the environment. And then lastly, it's really on the procurement processes, right? So I think to me, from a small company perspective, I think those are relatively easy to implement, especially it doesn't break the bank. But
Yeah.
of course, I'm pretty sure different companies has a different requirement or different needs.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Okay. For another, Mady, do we have any question on your side?
Yeah, we have one question in the chat from Sabaria. She's asking so when large proportion of road traffic are private cars, can they be employed to provide delivery along their normal routes or destinations? Can it reduce the delivery vehicle on the road? So kind of referring to crowd shipping, and if you think it can help to reduce the externalities for freight activities in urban areas.
Oh,
Can I
Yeah,
answer the question?
Yes, please.
Okay, so DHL are using these private cars who are EVs, for example, and we ask them to do our deliveries also in number of countries and number of cities, and especially when we get huge peaks, we do utilize them definitely. So we are utilizing these EVs who are passenger vans, for example, just like Grab or anyone else. We do utilize them on a regular basis.
okay.
So-
And is that happening in Singapore, or is it just?
Yeah, it happens in Singapore.
Oh, wow.
Australia. Yeah.
Wow. Okay, great. I have one question. We run it. We're over.
Maybe Tim, just I follow up on that.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I think what if you are not using the people that they're providing the service for you, they don't use EV vehicles. What if they use their personal vehicle? So is it going to be more sustainable? I mean, in terms of fuel consumption, emission, or it can be lack of consolidation. Another way, there was one study in Singapore done by SUTD, my colleagues in SUTD. They checked what if the crowd shipping to be done by public transport. So they did one case study, and using public transport definitely helps to reduce the fuel consumption and emissions. But using other modes, it's a bit, I haven't seen any study in Singapore at least, but perhaps it's a good area for have some collaboration with academia and industry companies here to quantify that. Please go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. Well, that's great. Well, it's almost well, it's past noon, and I know everybody is very busy to get back to the office. Unfortunately, we only had maybe 2 or 3 questions there for the Q&A. Or maybe I have like really quick question for the end. Assuming one of the questions was, assuming we have high capacity EV charging tech, heavy duty EV trucks available in Singapore, what other factors are stopping EV trucks being used for 100% of last mile delivery? What are the factors prohibiting you? We have already mentioned cost seemed to be the biggest thing for him. Is there any other factor that anybody can share?
And I would like to chip in on that, Tim. I think for EVs, charging infrastructures, in a country like Singapore, where there is land scarcity, having sufficient EV charging in our own depots, for example, might be very limiting. And there needs to be partnership, with other charging infrastructures that might be available publicly to supplement the needs so that the cost pressures is not too high on the company in that aspect. And cost is definitely a big one. In Singapore, the COE, Certificate of Entitlements, for those who are not familiar, is extremely expensive, and whether there can be policy changes to actually allow a differentiated pricing for electric vehicles as an initial push, for earlier adoption of electric vehicles that will actually help as well.
All right, thank you. Thank you for that. Those are some really great sharings there in terms of the challenges. As Edward has put in all questions, we have other questions that we had received, and we will share those answers by the speakers in writing, and we'll publish those on the CILT website for everybody to look at. Do check back at our website on the LinkedIn page in the coming 10 days. I wanted to close out the webinar today quickly and thank everyone for sharing and attending. We at the CILT want to warmly express our gratitude to our speakers today, especially everybody. Hassan, second time speaker, amazing, shout out, okay, to you. You're a great participant. And also I wanted to, do look at CILT's website, look at us on LinkedIn, follow us on LinkedIn, that would be great. Join CILT as a member, why not? Be part of the team making logistics and transport so strong here in Singapore, which continues to make us one of the biggest hubs in the world. And from me to everyone, and Matey,
do
the plug. We have two more.
Yeah, I put the link for the fourth webinar, which will be the last seminar on the series of urban logistics operations in Singapore.
Right.
We will be addressing the last mile challenges and distribution logistics.
That's right.
We have speakers from Lalamove, GoGoX, and also the Big Network. Hopefully, we will be checking the challenges and also coming up with some solutions that those companies are using. So I put the link in the chat. So please feel free to sign up and join the session.
Yeah. And again, we will also have a webinar on August 17th, which also covers maritime container shipping. My gosh, so much happening at CILT. So please, if you're interested in how to move urban logistics forward for Singapore and the region, please attend those webinars. And for me to everyone, have a great Friday, have a great lunch, and keep trucking.